Coming up, the Sioux Chef discusses the importance of food and sovereignty. A tribal leader summit tackles laws aimed at solving the crisis of violence against Native women. And we learn some of the reactions from Indigenous people after the first U.S. president faces criminal charges. I'm Aaliyah Chavez. Join us for those interviews plus headlines from the ICT Newscast.
This program is made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people.
Arizona State University welcomes 3,500 Indigenous students from Arizona and across the nation. It serves one of the largest populations of Indigenous students among U.S. colleges and universities. We created a sense of place for tribal nations to create futures of their own making through community outreach and research, taught by world-class Indigenous faculty where they see a reflection of themselves and their experiences. Find community at ASU.
Ku'watsi Hopa. Thank you for joining us. We start today in Nevada, where there are new developments in the sex abuse trial involving Nathan Chasinghorse, the former Dances with Wolves actor. He was set to appear in court this week ahead of a trial that was previously scheduled for April 17th. A judge this week postponed that trial for Chasinghorse, who was indicted in state court in late February on 19 counts. The charges allege that for a decade, Chasinghorse sexually abused and kidnapped Indigenous women and girls in the Las Vegas area. He has denied those allegations and has pleaded not guilty. Chasinghorse also faces criminal charges in a U.S. District Court in Canada and the Fort Peck Indian Reservation in Montana. Chasinghorse's new trial will now begin on May 1st. A judge says the delay will give more time for lawyers to iron out pending motions in the case. Well, two women previously convicted of misdemeanors in the death of a child on the Crow Indian Reservation will now face felony charges. Rosine Lincoln and Veronica Dust have been charged in Montana with murder and tampering with evidence in a 2019 case involving an Indigenous girl. 6-year-old Mildred Alexis Old Crow was placed in the couple's custody after being removed from her mother's care in 2017. In November 2020, Mildred's relatives informed federal agents that the girl had not been seen in over 18 months. The defendants were arrested a month later following an investigation. The Crow Tribal Court convicted the women of misdemeanor endangerment and custodial interference. They were each sentenced to 18 months in jail and fined $2,000. But there was still no trace of little Mildred Old Crow. In February 2021, the little girl's body was discovered in a trailer near the community of Gary Owen, Montana. Last week, both defendants appeared in Bighorn County District Court and pleaded not guilty to the new felony charges. If convicted, the couple faces up to 100 years in prison and $50,000 in fines. In South Dakota, the Sisseton Wahpeton Oyate is awaiting the return of a child's remains from the Carlisle Industrial Indian School. Chief Joseph Laframboise's 13-year-old son Amos died just 20 days after arriving at the school in 1879. Like so many other victims, the boy was buried on the Carlisle, Pennsylvania campus. Lawyers for the tribe have requested the child be returned under the federal law, the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act. The act requires the U.S. Army to initiate proceedings to repatriate Amos's remains. After nearly 145 years, the Office of Army Cemeteries stated the child's disinterment was approved a year ago and is now scheduled to take place in September. Amos Laframboise will then finally be laid to rest next to his celebrated father on the Lake Traverse Reservation. And those are the headlines for the ICT Newscast. The Coalition to Stop Violence Against Native Women hosted its 9th annual gathering for tribal leaders in New Mexico. The goal of the two-day meeting is to look at federal, state, and tribal laws as they respond to violence in tribal communities. We're joined now virtually by Tiffany Jiron, who is a policy and advocacy coordinator for the organization. Hi, Tiffany, welcome.
Tiffany Jiron, Pueblo Vasleta, Policy and Advocacy Director for the Coalition to Stop Violence Against Native Women. Thank you for having me today.
The President signed the reauthorization of the Violence Against Women Act in March of 2022. What are the questions from tribal leaders in terms of how that is being implemented?
Some of the questions that we find from tribal leaders is how are we going to fully implement VAWA without full support of the federal government with funding. And it's very critical for tribal nations. This means that tribes could exercise full jurisdiction and prosecute non-natives. As we know, crimes committed on tribal lands is pretty much a slap on the wrist. And that is due in part because of the Major Crimes Act and tribes not having full jurisdiction to prosecute crimes for non-native folks.
One of the goals of the Tribal Law and Order Act, which was also addressed, is to hire more law enforcement officers to address public safety needs. Even though it was signed in 2010, are tribal leaders seeing success with that?
That's a wonderful question, Aaliyah. There's still gaps in the efficiency of TLOA. The biggest change that mattered the most with the Tribal Law and Order Act was the change in sentencing, with the authority of tribal courts increasing sentencing from a year to 3 years. All tribes do have 1 year, that is the law, but they have to meet certain criteria and check off all the check boxes so that tribes can sentence up to 3 years, but that comes at a cost, just like VAWA. We know that tribes and tribal communities are notoriously underfunded and under-resourced. And so again, there's just a shortage of law enforcement because of the remoteness of our tribal communities and having to compete with other local law enforcement agencies who have, better wages or better benefit packages. That is because they're funded from a different area than tribal law enforcement are. And so because of that, that increases the probability or decreases the probability of certain cases going forward because of the shortage of law enforcement officers. That can also cause law enforcement officers not being able to do a full report so that it can go on to prosecution when there's a sexual assault on tribal communities. Not a lot of the evidence that is critical to the case is not provided because of the shortage of law enforcement officers on our tribal communities. And it's really hard to attract the right talent in our communities, and we deserve it. We are not only citizens of the United States, we're citizens of our tribal communities, but we deserve just as much justice as everyone else.
Tiffany, I'd love to learn more about this Tribal Leader Summit. How and why was this gathering created to begin with?
So the Tribal Leader Summit is an annual briefing for tribal leaders, advocates, community members, and it increases the awareness of the high rates of violence within our communities. And we provide this so that tribal leaders have updated policies and learn of the laws that impact our Indigenous women and children, our LGBTQ relatives, and our tribal communities. It's very instrumental of us coming together to provide resources, policy advocacy, and support tribal communities to end the cycles of violence within our communities. And as you know, the tribal leaders, the TLOA and VAWA represent a complete shift in federal policy, and neither law would exist without the efforts of Indigenous Native women. So that's why we call on our tribal leaders every year to support us, because we can no longer do this work alone.
Tell us who hosted this year's event and why it was important for you all to work with this individual.
Oh my gosh, we were very lucky to have a wonderful person by the name of Dallas Goldtooth. So Dallas Goldtooth was our host, our MC for the 2-day event. We were very happy because he brought a lot of humor and joy to the event, and even though the topics were really heavy for participants, he just brought a lot of light into the conversations that we were having. He is not only just someone that we see as a star in on our TV shows, but we see him as an advocate for Native women and for our environment. So walking away from working and meeting Dallas Goldtooth, I really feel like I walked away with having a friend and an ally, because he was just so helpful and creating a better and safer space to hold these conversations. We see him as an advocate for sure.
Well, Tiffany, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much, Leah.
Continuing our coverage from Res 2023, Sean Sherman, also known as the Sioux Chef, is the owner of the restaurant Owamni in Minneapolis, Minnesota. His restaurant showcases Indigenous cuisine and the importance of community. ICT's Shirley Sneve sat down with Sean in Las Vegas to hear more.
Well, we've just arrived here at the Res conference, and who do I run into but my cousin? Great to see you, Sean Sherman.
Nice to see you also. Thank you.
And what are you doing here?
This is my first Res, so I'm excited. We did some menu stuff with them, so we sent them some recipes, and they're going to be serving some recipes that we created for them. And I'm actually trying to find the right people to drop off some food stuff so they can finish it. And then this morning I'm on a panel with Andy Murphy on Farm Bill stuff.
The Farm Bill, that's really interesting. What's your particular take on it, and what do you want to see?
I just want to see, I think it's a great opportunity, obviously, because it's every 5 years and it's, coming up right now, and obviously politics are a mess, but, it's going to go through no matter what, because it has to. And if we're able to squeeze in some rewordings and a few other things, there's a lot of pieces that could be added to really help with just Indigenous food availability and production and everything across the board, and accessibility.
And how does that impact what you do in the restaurant?
For me, the restaurant's just, it's a proof of concept that we can have this really nice, modern Indigenous restaurant in a beautiful setting, a full staff, because I think we have 150 employees, and, it's a really beautiful thing. But my larger work is with the nonprofit and just creating the two pillars of the nonprofit, which is NATIVS, or North American Traditional Indigenous Food Systems, is creating access to Indigenous foods and creating access to Indigenous education. So with the Farm Bill, that's where it really works, because our vision is trying to spread out across North America to help set up support systems for more Indigenous culinary operations. And there's just a lot of hurdles and a lot of situations that the government, their rules, hinder us from having our own Indigenous foods around, especially when it comes to proteins or moving foods across state lines and things like that. And there's just a lot of little fixes that we need to keep pushing forward to have a healthier, better economics around Indigenous foods in general, and just to really see it grow over the next few decades.
One of the things that I'm grateful for my parents, even though at the time I wouldn't have told you I was grateful, is that we always had big gardens when I was growing up. It was great because I learned to appreciate agriculture and farming and where your food comes from. And I think that that's an opportunity that reservation-based schools can do, is to introduce agriculture and what it has to do with their life early on.
Absolutely, it's that connection to growing, it's that connection to just how plants work, and just seeing food and from a different perception, where a lot of kids just grow up thinking food comes from the grocery store, and there's no connection to how food is actually grown. So it's really important for our education to really focus on how do we grow food, how do we see food, how do we identify food out in the wild, and how do we utilize that.
And how's the winter been for you?
Well, in Minnesota, it's like the North Pole, basically. So, we have a really nice growing season because it's just starting. We just started maple tapping, like this last weekend. And so it's slowly going to turn back into food season. So we'll have about 5 months of good weather and about 18 months of winter again in the end.
18 months of winter. My daughter sent me snow pictures over the weekend. It was crazy.
Oh, I know. We had a foot of snow just out of nowhere. So.
Oh, geez. So tell us about a little bit more about the nonprofit and what's up with that.
So nonprofit Natives, we're based in South Minneapolis. We're right on Lake Street in Minneapolis, and we're about ready to launch a Native market space. So our community around us in the city will have an access to purchasing Indigenous food products that we'll be curating and growing, and even making products ourselves out of our own kitchen. And then we also have a Native classroom where we're just going to be hosting a whole bunch of Indigenous focused curriculum, everything from culinary and food preservation and cooking techniques to language and crafting and medicinals and foraging and farming, whatever it might be. We're just creating a space to teach Indigenous education. And everything we teach is going to be recorded because we invested into lots of video stuff, so we can just record everything, edit it, get it online, and just create a ton of video content on all sorts of Indigenous focused curriculum. So that's an exciting piece, and that's ready to launch within just the next couple of months. So we're really excited because that was the first model of what the Indigenous Food Lab, which is the public-facing piece of our nonprofit, is supposed to be. And then we're already working to creating more extensions of Indigenous food labs in different regions. So we're already planting seeds to open one in Anchorage, Alaska, Bozeman, Montana, Rapid City, South Dakota, and even beyond. So there's a lot of interest out there, and we're trying to create a system that we can just keep building and keep creating regional center points for more education development, more food access.
Last time I ate at the restaurant, I think I had an elk something, which surprised me that I liked it as much as I did. And I told you the story about my granddaughter ordering the bug salad and really enjoying the little the crunchy crickets.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we sell a lot of crickets, but yeah, it's a lot of fun. We have a great team there. And we give them a lot of opportunity to be creative, and we're just creating a whole new generation of Indigenous creativity when it comes to culinary.
I've noticed over the years that there have been some folks that have mentored with you or apprenticed with you and are off doing their own thing around the country, and that's really kind of fun to see.
Yeah, we're just trying to be healthy role models and give people opportunities. And like I said, we have 150 employees at the restaurant, and it's good, it's popular, and restaurants are difficult, and we're growing really fast with the nonprofit. We're going through a lot of coming into ourselves really quickly because we opened up right in the middle of the pandemic and basically right in the midst of the George Floyd situation in Minneapolis. So we kind of grew up in this fire that was happening at the time, and but it feels good where we're at and where we're moving. So we feel like the future looks really bright for us. So that's how we feel.
I want to turn and talk about something completely different, and that's your family.
Okay.
And I want to talk to you about your family because I think that having generations of folks in your background supporting you and making it a priority to be educated and to try new things. You want to talk a little bit about the influence that your family's had on your life choices?
Yeah, I mean, obviously growing up on Pine Ridge Reservation, we grew up on my mom's dad's cattle ranch, so we had a lot of cattle. They ran a lot of cattle, they had a lot of acreage that they were managing, and we just had a lot of open land to explore as kids, because I grew up in a generation where we didn't watch TV, we still read books, and we spent all of our time outside, basically. I was actually teasing my dad because he was saying we were all raised by boomers. I was like, boomers didn't raise us, they just kicked us outside till dark. That's all they did, And but we had I feel like a lot of my family. There's just been a lot, like my cousin Lori Puyer. She's done such amazing work, and my other cousin Walt Puyer in Denver. My uncle Ben Sherman. We were just in Perth, Australia, at this big World Indigenous Tourism Summit together. There's just been a lot of really positive influences out there of trying to make a difference and trying to do something good and try to give something back to our community where we came from and beyond even. So I feel really honored and blessed that a lot of my family have done something really well just it's great.
Well, thank you, Sean Sherman, chef from Minneapolis. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All eyes were on the Manhattan courthouse Tuesday as former President Donald Trump pleaded not guilty to 34 felony counts. The charges come from alleged falsifying of business records from hush money payments to adult film actor Stormy Daniels. So what has been the reaction from Native leaders? Holly Cook-Makar weighs in. She is an ICT regular contributor and partner with Spirit Rock Consulting. Holly is also a board member of Indig Public Media, the parent company that owns ICT and the ICT Newscast. Hi, Holly.
Hi, Leah. It's good to see you again.
It was hard to miss former President Trump's arraignment yesterday. What have you been hearing from Native leaders?
You know, I heard what I would call kind of casual interest and from a spectator point of view in talking to several folks around Res in the last couple of days that not super concerned about the impacts on Indian country, but about the spectacle of it all. And I think we saw some of that play out in terms of the number of protesters that weren't there, you know, how things rolled out, and it was not as much of a circus. I understand from some of the mainstream media reporting. So the response from tribal leaders, I think, was, you know, it was a bit of a sideshow. There's a lot going on here at Res, and there is a lot of topics to be covered. And when folks are looking towards 2024, at this point, I'm not sure the tribal leadership and other folks that I've talked to from Indian country are really looking at Trump's candidacy right now.
That is a good point, because all of this legal action against Trump is happening as he is aiming for another White House run. How exactly do you see that potential candidacy impacting Indian country?
Well, you know, 2024 is a huge opportunity for tribes. And so who the candidates are, both in the presidential and as we go down the ballot and House and Senate races, there is going to be a lot of interest, obviously, in who the candidates are for the presidency. Look, Trump has announced his candidacy, as have a couple of others on the Republican side of the aisle. Folks are really waiting for President Biden to confirm whether or not he is running again. I think my prediction is he absolutely is, and it would surprise me if he weren't. There would be other things moving around if that were the case. So Indian country's views on how this is going to play out, I think, is really what that primary is going to look like on the Republican side of the aisle.
How do you forecast the Native vote playing in the 2024 election cycle, both for the presidency and for other seats in the Congress?
Well, as I mentioned, this is a huge opportunity for us. Both chambers are so evenly split, right? And so there are a couple of races that could swing the balance of power in each chamber. The state of Montana, Senator Jon Tester is up, considered one of the hottest races in the nation. It was a huge sigh of relief from the Democratic side of the aisle when he announced last month that he would be running again. And that state has a high Native vote population. Senator Jon Tester knows that the Native vote has been critical to each one of his elections and election victories. So he will be paying a lot of attention. And if he wins that race, it'll go a long way towards keeping a Democratic majority. And if he loses it, that will fuel a Republican takeover of the Senate. So there will be a lot of effort, I think, in turning out the Native vote, what their issues are, what their priorities are. And they will definitely have a seat at the table. Same thing in Arizona. So we've got a couple of states where there are hot races. Those 2 seats alone could change the balance of power in the U.S. Senate. Balance of power in the House, very close. All that would have to flip were 4 seats, right? And it would be a change in the majority there. And there are seats where tribes can make a difference and play that role in the U.S. Congress in individual House races. Now, it's a tougher landscape for Democrats. They have, you know, there are 33, every 2 years, a third of the Senate is up for re-election. So there are 33 seats up for re-election this year. 23 of those seats are held by Democrats, 10 by Republicans. It's a very tough landscape for Democrats in the U.S. Senate. And just like we saw last time in the House, it's going to be hand-to-hand combat to win each of those districts as well.
Holly, 2024's election seems far away, but we know that in politics things ramp up very quickly. At what point do you think we can start expecting to hear from Native folks who are going to be running for office, given that primaries and, of course, general election are around the corner?
If you are thinking of running for office from Indian country, the time is now to start laying the groundwork. It's something we've seen that, folks wait until January next year. But if you're thinking of running for office, begin building those relationships within your respective parties, putting together a plan, looking at what that race looks like, whether it's competitive, looking at the partisan voter index, which is, they will gauge whether it's a plus D or plus R by a certain number of percentage points, and look at the prior race. But do the work and build those relationships. Advanced Native Political Leadership has a whole program that supports candidate development from Indian country, and I know they've got a number of sessions coming up, and you visited with them here as well on the newscast. So I expect for us to see a number of candidates, Native American candidates, running again, and it's going to be an exciting landscape.
And we should note that ICT loves to cover all of the Native folks running for office, whether you're a Democrat, Republican, or independent. So we'll also keep an eye out for those. ICT regular contributor Holly Cook-Makar, thank you so much.
Thank you, Aaliyah.
And that's a slice of our Indigenous world. For all the latest, visit ictnews.org. From all of us in the newsroom, stay safe, my relatives.
This program is made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people.